What is it like being the president of Sandhills Community College?
Ooh, that's a great question. What is it like compared to not being a president or compared to the place where I used to be president? I used to be president of a liberal arts college, a small private Catholic liberal arts college, Belmont Abbey College, near Charlotte. I came here in 1989, and people would always ask me, you know, how different is it from being at Belmont Abbey? And I used to say that the jobs are pretty much the same. The stakes there were higher. If I mess up here, I could lose my job. If I messed up there, everybody would have lost their job because they were on such tenuous financial footing. So it's a little bit easier than being president of a small, non-selective liberal arts college, but it's harder than most things because it requires a skill set that's pretty varied, and yet it's the most fun job I can imagine ever having. I just could never imagine, you know, as you know, my favorite morning of the week is Monday, because I just love coming to this place, and I love the people I work with. I love the work we get to do. I love the environment, the beautiful campus. You know, I walk sometimes in the morning before school starts, and I just walk around. I look at the grounds and the grass and the trees and the stuff that the maintenance guys have done, and I think to myself, this is like, it's like being at the Biltmore House, you know. And so it's a wonderful job. It really is. It's I can't imagine doing anything else in the world that I would enjoy as much as I enjoy this. I think of it like it's like being a social worker, but all your clients get better. You know, I've often thought, you know, being a real social worker, you know, it could be kind of depressing because people, you know, keep making the same mistakes over and over and over again. Our students make mistakes, but hopefully we correct them and they go on. So it's education's a nice business to be in. You know that very well. When I was, I was teaching at the College of Charleston. This is many, many years ago. And I came to Pinehurst. I used to come here on vacation to play golf with my buddies. Tom Livingston from the business department, Skip Godow from the philosophy department, and Dick Crosby from the computer science department. And we'd come up here and play golf. And I came out Airport Road one day. This has to be, you know, 1976 or something like that. And I saw this little college, and I looked at that and I thought, wow, that is really cool. Maybe someday I'll get to work there. And lo and behold, I not only got to work here, I got to be the president here. And sometimes I walk around and I just kind of pinch myself, thinking that the fates have smiled on me in almost unimaginable, you know, generosity. And I not only work here, I get to be the president. So it's a great feeling, I'll tell you that.
What classes do you teach?
I teach American government, which is really a kind of a, I don't want to say awkward, but it's a potentially volatile class to teach. It's interesting, you can't neglect what's going on in the world around you, but you don't want to turn it into just a bunch of people sitting around a table complaining about whatever. So you try to mix an appreciation for what's going on currently with the sort of historical structure that put the government in the place that it is, and it's fun. Students like it. I bring in some guest speakers from time to time. We have a good time, a lot of laughs.
Tell us a bit about the Hoke County campus.
As you know, we have we have a main campus, the Moore County campus, and we have a campus in Rayford at Hoke County. We serve two counties. The community college system is divided up in such a way that each school serves a county or two. I think there are 100 counties and 58 colleges, so on the average, each college serves two counties. We serve Moore, which is perhaps the most affluent county in North Carolina, and Hoke, which by many measurements is the least affluent county. So it's a really interesting juxtaposition. The Hoke County campus was created on land given to us by the Upchurch family. Wyatt and Mary Upchurch. Mary was a trustee here at Sandhills for 28 years. Their name was the first name, just like the Myers, the first named building here and I know you wanted to talk about that. The first named building here is named for the Myers because they gave us the land that we sit on. The first named building at Hoke was named for the Upchurches because they gave us the land that we sit on. That campus houses the Sandhoke Early College. It houses regular curriculum programs that are offered to the community. It houses advanced manufacturing programs that work in cooperation with Unilever, which is the largest employer in Hoke County. And it hopefully one day soon will be the home of many of the Career and College Promise courses that we teach down there. So it's a busy and active place. Twana McKnight is the Hoke County campus director, and I'm sure Raymond talked about the foundation. The Sandhills Community College Foundation is probably the biggest single reason why Sandhills is a little bit different than most community colleges. We have a very generous community. They express that generosity through gifts to the foundation. And many times when those gifts are of an extraordinary nature, we name things on campus for the people who gave them. There are some classrooms that are named. We just named a computer lab complex, the Frick Center over in Van Dusen Hall. But I can't remember even how many buildings we have on campus. What do we have? 15? Be a good guess. They all have a person's name on them. And 3 of them are named for board chairs. Blue Hall, Clifton Blue was the first board chair at Sandhills. Causey Hall, Ed Causey was the second board chair, and Little Hall, George is the third, only the third board chair we've had in the 55-year history of the college. And of course, Stone Hall and Dempsey Hall are named for the 2 presidents. The others are named for people who have made extraordinary, let me see if there are any exceptions to this. I don't believe so. There are people who made extraordinary financial commitments to the institution. Kennedy Hall, Wellard Hall, Meyer Hall, the library, all of those buildings were named after people who made 7-figure gifts to the college. We're very lucky to live in a community which has a level of affluence. We're very lucky to be the only higher educational game in town, so to speak. I mean, you could work really hard to raise money at Durham Tech, but there is Duke down the street. So we don't have any competition in that regard. And last but not least, I've been here 30 years, and I know everybody's phone number. I'll never forget, go back, I know this about history, when Betty Van Dusen, I went over to Betty Van Dusen's house to ask her to join our foundation board. And she said, "Oh, you didn't come to ask for money." I said, "Well, not exactly. I'd like you to be on the foundation board, and I would hope that, you know, the expectation would be that maybe you would." She said, "Oh, I thought you wanted to ask for money." I said, "No, not really." She said, "Well, I'm prepared to give you some money." And I said, "Oh, well." She said, "What do you need money for?" And I really had not planned this. I wasn't coming to ask her for anything. But I thought, I can't mess this one up. And she said, "What do you need money for?" And I thought, I need money because our faculty work very hard and they never get a chance to refresh themselves. So I need money to create a sabbatical program. And she said, "Well, how much money would that take?" And I said, "Well, I'd have to endow it." So I said, "It would take a lot of money." And she said, "I have a lot of money." What is this? Is this like a candid camera? I mean, is she all of a sudden going to say, "April Fool"? And she said, "How much money do you need?" And I said, "Well, doing some math, I'm thinking, well, suppose you want to spend $25,000 a year. If you endow that, you generally spend 5% of your endowment. So I'm extrapolating backwards, if there is such a phrase as extrapolating backwards. And I go, $500,000. And her husband was there, and she said, "Bill, go in and get one of those stock certificates." And he goes in, and he comes back, and she gives me $500,000. And I thought to myself, oh, what if I'd said $2 million? That was because I wasn't like a smooth operator knowing how to ask her for money, and I didn't give her a fancy brochure, but I had brought her over to meet the nursing faculty. I had brought her over for tours of the campus. I had brought her over to learn what we do in the library. I had brought her over and shown her the, this is well before your time, but we used to, all of Van Dusen Hall used to be in trailers over there behind Causey Hall. We had like a trailer village, or as we would say, a village of learning cottages. She became obviously a very generous benefactor of the college, but I didn't ask her for that. If you're going to get somebody to give you money without you asking for it, and that's the way I operate because I hate asking people for money. If you're going to get them to give it to you without you asking for it, you have to invest the time in nurturing the relationship and showing them what you do and showing them how important your work is. And you teach English, you teach the most important skill a person will ever develop in their life, ever. And that a gift from them can help you do that even better. That sort of connection leads them to come to you and say, how can we help? And fortunately, we have enough people in this town who ask that question, and I always have an answer for them.
What was it like coming from a four-year school to here, and what made coming here the best choice for you?
Oh, that's a wonderful question, because it's a very unusual career path. As you know, we're really in silos. University people don't go to liberal arts colleges, and they certainly don't go to community colleges. In fact, that is true to such an extent that I used to come here playing golf with my friends, as I told you. And even after I became president of Belmont Abbey, I would meet my Charleston buddies. They would come from Charleston and I would come from Charlotte, and we would meet here for golf. And this is back in the day when Pinehurst was truly a serene place. There was literally only one stoplight. You know, it's a little busier now, but, and I would come by and I'd play golf, and we'd stay at the Pinecrest Inn. And it was just delightful. We'd sit on the porch, smoke cigars, you know, the usual stuff. And I used to say to the innkeeper, Bob Barrett, I said, Barrett, I just love this place. I wish I could move here. I just love the serenity of Pinehurst. So one year at Christmas, just about, let's see, it's been Christmas of 1988, 30 years ago, Bob Barrett called me at Christmas. I thought he was just calling to wish me a happy Christmas. He said, President of the local college is retiring. You're always talking about wanting to live here. Why don't you come down here? There's no college in Pinehurst. He said, yes, there is, Sandhills Community College. Now, as a liberal arts college guy, I did not have a very high opinion of community colleges. I said, well, God, I don't know anything about community colleges. Don't they teach welding? Isn't that what they do? And Bob said, well, yes, he said they do some of that. He said, but Sandhills is a very interesting place. You need to come down and see it. And he said, the current president is a friend of mine, and the board chair is a friend of mine. He said, let me call them and see if they'd be interested in talking to you. So on home, I said to Evelyn, I just got a call today from Bob Barrett. He thinks I ought to move to Pinehurst. Now, I'm a golfer, and my wife is a horseback rider. If you're going to live anywhere on earth to pursue those two passions, this is the place. So I said, should I just stop it now, or should I, She said, well, why don't you be open to it? Because even though I love Belmont Abbey, it was a very hard job, though. As I said, if I'd messed up, we were on the financial edge all the time. Plus, we never liked Charlotte. It was very different than it is now. We had moved from Charleston, and Charlotte was okay, but it just never excited our souls. Pinehurst and Southern Pines have always excited our souls. So I said, well, I'll take a look at it. So I talked to my board chair at Belmont Abbey. He said, well, you're not going to go to community college. Nobody goes from a 4-year college to a 2-year college. And I said, well, I really like it down there. I'm just thinking about my life and my kids' life and my family life. Do I want to live in Charlotte, which I didn't have enough money to live in the nice part of Charlotte, so I kind of lived in the truck stop part of Charlotte. I just thought maybe this is worth pursuing. So I came down here for my interview, and they said, why would a president of a 4-year college want to become the president of a 2-year college? And I said, well, I'll give you 3 reasons. Number 1, we've just finished a capital campaign, and it's a good time for me to move. Number 2, my son is just entering the 9th grade, so it's a good time for me to move. And number 3, I don't even remember what number 3 is. And they said, well, that sounds good. And I said, but I got to be honest with you. I said, number 4 is, if this place was located in Akron, Ohio, we would not be having this conversation. I'm interested in this job because I want to live here for the rest of my life. So I made a very unusual career decision. People almost never do this. And what I brought with me was an ability to raise money, because I had to do that at Belmont Abbey, just to keep the light bill paid. What I didn't bring with me, but it didn't take me very long to learn, was an appreciation for the work that community colleges do. If I were offered the presidency of Princeton today, I wouldn't take it. I would never leave community colleges. Community colleges are 80% education and 20% social work. And I love both parts of that equation. I love the fact that our fundamental clients are kids for whom the fates have not always smiled. They have struggles. They have a difficult life at times. They have a life where, you know, I went to Notre Dame, and I'll bet you that the guys I went to school with, almost nobody flunks out of Notre Dame because they only take a very few people. But the guys who flunked out are doing fine. You know, they ended up going to Indiana State. You flunk out of Sandhills, this is the last train to Clarksville. You know, I mean, we are the bridge between failure and success for people. That's an enormous responsibility, but it's a responsibility that I enjoy and that I know the people who work here share that commitment. They share the belief that, you know, and I don't want to pick on liberal arts college faculty, but I got tired of hearing people complain about the fact that the SATs of our entering freshmen weren't high enough. What I wanted to do is to be around people who cared more about what you were when you left than what you were when you got there. And community colleges are that way. And so this is, you know, it's just a great, that call from Bob Barrett was one of the greatest Christmas gifts I ever got, because it brought me here. And as soon as I was here, I knew this is where I wanted to be.
What were some of the keys to your success on this campus when you first arrived?
Well, the first thing I learned, and again, I don't want to say anything negative about my previous employer, but the first thing I learned was 2 things. One, faculty were great, just great. People are very nice. That's not always a guarantee when you're dealing with college faculty, who can sometimes have a sense of entitlement that is perhaps not appropriate. But the second thing was, the Board of Trustees wanted to do more for the faculty and staff, even more than I was interested in doing. When I'd been at my previous employer, I'd come in and I'd say, I think we need to give the faculty a 5% raise this year. And they would say, make it 3. I'd say, okay. You come into Sandhills and you say, you know, we're thinking about giving the faculty a 3% raise. And George and his cronies will say, is that all you can do? You know, they are as interested in your welfare as I am. So a great faculty and a great board, and the wonderful job that Raymond Stone did of building this place and setting it on the right path. You know, it's much easier to swim downstream than it is to swim upstream. And Since the day I got here, I've been swimming downstream because of the work that Raymond did, and because of the tremendous support that we have received from the pilot, believe it or not. It's impossible to overstate how important a community, the media, the press is, in setting people's mindsets. Since day one, when Sam Reagan owned the pilot, and now with David Warnoff as the owner, it's even more pronounced. Everything we do, they're complimentary of. They laud us. They highlight our successes. And so when you go into a person's home and say, look, I'd like you to think about giving a gift to the college, they'll say, well, yeah, you guys really do a good job. Well, where did they learn that? They learned that from the media. And in this community, the media is the pilot. Now, it's changed a bit with social media in the last 4 or 5 years. But for most of my tenure here, the primary source of information about the college has been the pilot. And it's uniformly positive. Raymond had done a lot of work in terms of creating a foundation and the foundation board. And I just, and every time I talk to Raymond, he says, well, you're exaggerating. And maybe I am a tiny bit, but the truth is, Raymond did most of the heavy lifting here. He put this place on such a solid footing that even I haven't been able to screw it up. He really deserves a lot of the credit. We're very different people, very different. But he loves me and I love him.
Certainly you've had highs and lows over the years. Do you have any moments you could point to as crowning moments of success here?
Well, it's kind of cool when they named Dempsey Hall for me. That was nice. My mom would have been proud of that. My dad would have been proud of that. It's really, when we started Sandhook Early College and got that going, and as successful as that's been a real achievement. Seeing what we've done with the foundation, I mean, the reality is that we raise a lot of money here, and this Sandhills Promise is essentially a way of saying to people, your first 2 years of college shouldn't cost you any more than your last 2 years of high school. Because if what you need to succeed in today's world is 2 years of college, and it's not just a high school diploma. When I graduated from high school, they said if you got a high school diploma, you'll be successful. That's not true anymore. You really need the 2 years of college. And if it's necessary, if it's really necessary, you ought not have to pay for it. And now you don't have to pay for it at Sandhills. And not only that, but we've been able to secure the funding necessary to endow it so that we won't have to go out every year and say, please give us money for the Sandhills Promise. That's taken care of by this capital campaign that we just finished. So, yeah, I mean, that's an achievement. Maybe the highest highs you get are if you have a good class reading your student evaluations.
When do you plan on retiring?
I get that asked all the time, but not by anybody here, but by people in the community that say, hey, John, and I always say, the minute it gets to the point where it's not the most fun I can imagine having, if I had all the money in the world and I could leave here and buy a yacht and sail around the south of France, I would stay here. And since I don't have all the money in the world, and I ain't going to the south of France anyway, I might as well stay working. I think, and I've told the board this, that if they ever see a decrease in my output, or whatever you want to call it, my ability to do this job, they owe me nothing. If they were to come in here tomorrow and say, John, you've been here long enough, I wouldn't have the tiniest bit of, anger or disappointment, because they've been so great to me. You don't stay in a place for 30 years if you don't have great bosses. And I've had the greatest bosses in the world for 30 years. The greatest people to work with, the greatest people to work among, and the greatest people to work for. Those are all great gifts. And I'm, as you know, I'm a rather informal person. I don't and maybe it's, it may almost be a false modesty. I mean, for example, I never sign letters, Dr. John Dempsey. I just don't do that. It's just not, and I'm not sure that could even be a reverse snobism or something. That might be more of a character flaw than a character asset. But I'm John Dempsey. Now I can get Heather, if nobody's around, to call me John. With Brenda, it's harder. We have the 15-mile rule. Outside of 15 miles, if we're together, she absolutely, positively has to call me John. But she just can't quite bring herself to do it when we're around here. Even though we're best friends. Heather will say John, when talking to Evelyn, she'll say, well, John did this or John, but she would no more come in here and say, hey, John. She's just not going to do that. But I'm a very informal person. I love to have the door open. It's astonishing that people don't ever abuse that. People never, they always say, I know you must be busy, and I want to say, not especially, but I feel guilty saying that. It's interesting being the president. You're totally in control of your own schedule. I'll often go home and I'll say to Evelyn, oh my God, what a day. It was just unbelievable. One thing after another, she says, and who put that schedule together for you, John? I'll say, well, that was actually me. She's right. I keep my own calendar. Heather never fools with my calendar. I answer my own phone calls. And you could say, well, that's because I want to be a servant leader. No, I think it's just because I'm curious. I like to find, I see that yellow light blinking. I want to know who's on the other end of it. Who's calling? What's going on? It's I'm not a structured person. I think to some extent it bothers our vice presidents a bit that I'm not as structured as I might otherwise be. That's one of the reasons why Brenda is so good. She's very structured, very organized, and she sort of monitors the internal operations of the college, leaving me free to come up with stupid ideas. And that's why we have Ron Lane as our vice president for college initiatives, because I get all these ideas and, well, it doesn't really work with Andy. I can't give it to Rebecca because she's got too much to do. I'll give it to Heather, or I'll give it to Ron. We're having a meeting the other day, and somebody said something about, these boards that people sit on. And you say, oh, you would like to be on the board? Oh, sure, I'll do that. And you go to a board meeting, and people pass out these papers, and this is what the agenda is, and you sort of nod, and you think, what the hell are these people talking about? Because nobody's ever trained to be on a board. It's a fair amount of responsibility, but we don't know what we're doing. So I thought, wouldn't it be great to have a workshop where we invite the people from all the boards of all these charitable organizations to come. We'll talk about what board membership is all about. And the way it came out, the way I thought of it was, one of the boards I am on, one of the people who worked for the organization either got fired or left, whatever. And the board had a big discussion about it. And the word about the discussion got to the person who, and I said, there are two serious violations here. Number one, that board has only one employee. The chief executive is the board's employee. All the other people work for the chief executive. They shouldn't be talking, the chief executive should not be talking to the board. If I decide now, because we're all friends, and I decide to fire Brenda Jackson, I'm going to tell them why. But this was not that sort of relationship. People didn't really know this person very well. And the CEO made a mistake by coming in and saying, I've decided to let so-and-so go. That's the CEO's business. If we don't like the way he or she runs it, we'll get rid of her. But we don't get into. The other thing is, what happens in board meetings, particularly if it involves personnel, is absolutely confidential. You don't go back and, So I thought to myself, how could this happen? And Evelyn said, it's because nobody knows what to do. Evelyn used to be chairman of the board at PNIC. She had no idea what she was doing. And I said, you know, you're right. Let's put a symposium together. Well, now we're going to do that. But Heather's doing it because she's dean of nonsense. When you get these ideas, you got to run with them. And I know from having been a person who's not a president, the president come in with about 12 different ridiculous ideas, 2 of which have some merit, the other 10 of which belong in the wastebasket. But somebody's got to be there to follow up on those 2. And that's why Ron and Heather do what they do. But that door is open for my benefit as much as the benefit of the people who want to see me. Because I want to know what's going on out there, just like they want to know what's going on in here. And I don't think I've ever been unwilling or unable to see somebody. Now, you know, Renee might come in and say, well, you know, I've been assigned 8 o'clock classes, you know, 14 semesters in a row. Can you help me? And all I can do is say, well, Renee, have you talked to Susan? I talked to Susan. Susan hates me. Have you talked to Julie? I talked to Julie. Julie hates me too. Well, have you talked to Rebecca? I talked to Rebecca. Rebecca hates me. You know, Renee, you ought to maybe freshen up that resume. So, I mean, I don't like to go outside the chain of command, but I always will talk to people, and if it's appropriate that they follow the chain of command, I ask them to do that. But you have more fun in an organization when you do a little bit of flying by the seat of your pants, you know? Colleges are such different organizations. I love being a part of an organization where the power that rests in the organization is kind of ambiguous. You know, you don't work for me. It's like I'm the CEO of the hospital, and you're a doctor who works at the hospital. Well, you're really important, because curing people is what the hospital's about, and teaching people is what the college is about. And that drives some people crazy. And I'll go to these presidents' meetings, they'll talk about, oh, their faculty's driving them crazy. They don't want to do this, they don't want to do that. You know, they're disloyal employees. And I think, oh, it's just like somebody running their fingernails on a blackboard. I say, you got it wrong, it's upside down. You know, we're kind of here to facilitate what they do, not to direct it. I know a lot more about running a college than you do, but you know a lot more about British literature than I do. And so the fact that we are a somewhat loosely structured organization is something that I'm comfortable with. Not everybody is comfortable with that. Some people like to, all the I's have to be dotted and the T's have to be crossed. And most faculty are creative people, and you can't treat creative people like bank tellers. Where they're just different. And so I love the fact that, I won't say I love the fact that, but that, you know, we have eccentric people on our faculty. And that's great. I love that. And I love the fact that, you know, I like to be liked as much as the next guy, but I love the fact that not everybody loves the president. You know, and they have the right not to love the president. That doesn't, I learned, one of the first lessons I ever learned is your ability to get along, and the specific example I'm thinking of is chemistry and Avery Dennis. He was a pain in the ass as a faculty member. The best damn chemistry teacher we ever had, until we got Pete. And I learned very early on that your ability to get along with the president has nothing to do with how good a chemistry professor you are. And if you don't acknowledge that and say, okay, we'll agree to disagree because you're great at what you do, then you shouldn't be a college president. You have to have a tolerance for ambiguity and for the fact that you work in a decentralized environment. And there's a great story about Dwight Eisenhower, who's one of my heroes. Military guy, used to doing things his own way. and he became president of Columbia University after the Second World War. Pretty good starter job. And at one point he made a talk, and he was talking about the faculty, and he referred to them as employees of the university. And the dean of the faculty, or the speaker of the faculty, got up and said, "Begging your pardon, Mr. President, but we are not employees of the university. We are the university." And he remembered that. And that really is the way I believe. The faculty are not employees. They are they're the core of what we do. And if that ceases to be the case, then I'll find another profession. But I like it the way it is.